Councilman Hug. Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Mudrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Coleman.
She's here.
She's here. Councilman Turk.
Here.
I had 1 minute.
First on the agenda this evening is citizens to be heard on agenda items. First is Jim Harvey regarding Council Memo 305-17.
I'm sorry. No.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Jim Harvey. I'm an attorney with the Tracy Law Firm at 2801 Black Road in Joliet, First Community Bank Building. And I'm here tonight on behalf of my client Beacon Roofing, known down here as North Coast Roofing. They do business at 2428 Reeves Road, and that's adjacent in the same subdivision as the proposed tax incentive agreement with SRS, which is just a half a block away on Terry Drive, 1806 Terry Drive. So we've been here 13 years. We have a dozen employees. We have 50,000 square feet of roofing distribution. We're the largest publicly traded distributor in North America. Joliet's been very good to us. We've just added 23,000 more square feet. We now have 50,000 square feet at that site. We support local manufacturing. We buy a lot of our roofing from John Mansville, right across the street. We support the community. We donate to Habitat for Humanity. We also, in the past year, did a roof for a local veteran. And what we're speaking to is a proposed incentive agreement. And first of all, I think, you know, we love doing business in Joliet. It's been very good to us. But, you know, in terms of basic fairness, we've been here 13 years, haven't asked for anything, have invested $500,000 in that site, and we do approximately $9 to $13 million a year in sales tax. So on average, about $10 million. Under the statute that you're dealing with tonight, you have to make certain findings. The sales tax incentive statute says that you have to look at the property and make certain findings in order for a project to be eligible. And I just, with all due respect, point out the one criteria which I think this property is going to be hard-pressed to meet, and that is that this proposed development, which is proposed to do similar roofing distribution in a 27,000 square foot building, will further economic development in the adjacent area. Now, if you've been down there, that subdivision is fully developed. It was developed in the late 70s, and it's totally built out. Now, we understand that this proposed incentive agreement would go for certain improvements, on-site improvements, but those aren't infrastructure improvements. Those are private improvements, just like the $500,000 in improvements we've done on our property. And we haven't asked for anything from Joliet. Joliet's been very good to us, but we think in terms of fundamental fairness and in terms of, you know, complying with the statute. You know, you didn't write the statute. You know, I didn't write the statute. The legislature did. And I think it's very difficult to determine that whether you're distributing Tupperware or roofing materials, that this proposal would significantly add to the economic development in that area. To the west, you've got the Empress, you've got Splash Station. To the east, you've got the Center Point major construction. Putting 27,000 square foot of anything in there, again, respectfully, in terms of adding to the adjacent property's economic impact, I think it is very difficult to make that finding. In closing, again, we are pleased with our Joliet site. It's been good to us. We love to compete. We just think when you take tax dollars, just like we generate at that site, you know, to an average of $10 million a year, it's government helping pick winners and losers, because that has an economic impact. You know, you bake that sales tax incentive into the lease, and it has a significant cost on doing business. And, you know, these aren't, again, street lights, sewers, storm sewers. These are private improvements, you know, just like the private improvements that we've done on that property, like I said, to the tune of $500,000 over the 13 years we've been there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom Osterberger regarding 305-17.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Osterberger. I'm an attorney for the applicant. It is up on your agenda. We can address it then, but I wanted to address Mr. Harvey's comments, but however you'd like me to proceed, Mayor.
You're here now. You can do
Okay.
it.
A couple things. Mr. Harvey has been hired by Norcoast, and obviously a great attorney. He looked at the statute. I think you have good counsel. They've looked at it. I'm sure they will look at it again and not lead you astray. So as far as the legal issue goes, I leave it to Marty and Chris. If they don't think it's satisfied, it's not going to pass. Secondly, I am aware of where Mr. Harvey's client is. I'm not sure. I know the building. It's owned by Mr. Reeves. Mr. Reeves did Crown Trig subdivision. I'm not sure where, I'm not questioning the veracity of a statement, but I'm not sure where they put $500,000 in improvements. The landlord is putting over $50,000 of internal improvements. SRS plans on putting their own improvements. What we are seeking, which was abundantly clear from day one from Steve Jones, is if you are looking for capital improvements that are going to help the area, then we'll consider this. Stormwater and paving were required here. Mr. Reeves did the subdivision, and there was no stormwater when it's done. Norcoast building, I am sure if staff looks at it, far exceeds what you would approve today. I'm not sure when the building was built. That's not what I'm here for. But they could have come if they were seeking improvements. So this project, I think, is exactly what the retail tax abatement agreement is designed to do. You have an industrial user. Industrial users never pay sales tax. Coming into an area, their closest location is Naperville. They're busting at the seams in Naperville. They want to be in southwest Will County. They've looked at other locations. When I began to talk to them, we didn't think we could do anything. And then when I learned they had retail tax, I said, well, wait, let's go to the city because I know the city wants you here. Based on the numbers that Mr. Harvey's indicated and based on what my client here has indicated, the city of Joliet over the 7 years looks to get approximately $1 million, and that's based on a conservative estimate from SRS being located here. The argument could be made that, well, wait a minute, we're just going to take some of Norcoast's retail tax away so that it's we break even. That's not what's happening. SRS currently can't service all the orders. If it opens at this location in Joliet, it's going to take some of its own orders in Naperville and continue to grow. So I think that this retail tax abatement is exactly what the city, in an industrial area, you don't see it much. I think it's great for the city. I hope you guys approve it. I think that both the committee and staff recognize that this is a valuable project, and I'd hate to see SRS in one of the local communities still competing against Norcoast, and yet the tax dollar is going somewhere else. So we ask that you approve it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else present that would like to speak on an agenda item this evening? Seeing none, we'll pass it over to Marty Shanahan to discuss the agenda items for tomorrow night's meeting.
Okay, thank you. There's going to be a ComEd smart meter installation presentation by ComEd VP Mike McMahon tomorrow. There's a handful of proclamations. Under City Council Committee reports, the CTIS, Land Use and Legislative, Public Safety and Public Service Committees will provide their reports. There's 6 items on the consent agenda. First, approval of minutes. Second is the 2016 Annual Treasurer's Report. The third and fourth items are the regular payroll for April 14th to April 27th and April 28th to May 11th. The fifth item, position vacancies, job descriptions, and F is IMRF disclosure pursuant to Public Act. Under license and permit applications, there's one item on the agenda for approval of a carnival. That's for the Taste of Joliet. Ordinances and resolutions. Council Memo 291-17, ordinance approving a reclassification of 1226 Plainfield Road from R2 Single Family to B1 Neighborhood Business Zoning. Recall this was on the agenda previously and it was tabled in order to have a neighborhood meeting which occurred here in the council chambers on May 18th. And the attorney is present for the applicant as well as the applicant, if there's any specific questions.
Yeah, I have, Marty. Mike, I was at the first meeting, I know there was a second one. Were there any changes made to the original plan? And if there were, can you tell the council what changes have been made?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike Hanson, representing the applicant. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think, Mayor, looks like we made as many as 30 changes since the original plan was presented. If I could list those for you. Number one, we eliminated the entrance on Connecticut Avenue, which was, I think, the very biggest complaint that the residents had. Number two, we eliminated the drive-through. Number three, we installed a fence on Connecticut Avenue with the land outside the fence in order to muffle noise. Number four, we eliminated any lighting on Connecticut Avenue. Number four, we installed a sidewalk on Connecticut Avenue. Next, behind the shopping center in the southwest portion of the lot, we put a 6-foot sound wall in with low-level lights, landscaping on the other side of the sound wall. We reduced the employee parking to 3 parallel spots behind the shopping center. We redesigned the back of the building to have a residential look to those residents who would be looking at the back of the building rather than have the normal square look. We took all the lights off the back of the building. We relocated the wall so that one of the neighbors who had a garage on the northeast part of the area could then had sufficient area to back her car out of her garage. We made a commitment there would be no rope lighting or LED lights on the property. In the front of the property, we made certain that all the lighting would be focused just on the interior parking lot. We made certain that we complied with all the setback requirements of the city of Joliet. We made certain that we had more parking that was necessary. We hired a traffic engineer who opined also on the parking in compliance with the Joliet ordinance as well as the state requirements. We were over that in parking. As a matter of fact, also, we were putting in our lease agreement that if employees need to park other than the shopping center, they will be parking across the street, down the road on Plainfield, where we secured additional parking spaces for employees of our tenants to park. We also did a traffic study because there were questions about traffic going through the residential area. The traffic study found out that 65% of all the trips are going to generate as they would right now on Plainfield Road, that there would only be approximately 14 new traffic patterns in peak time periods through this shopping center, which is extremely low volume. The traffic consultant also found that by taking away the entrance on Connecticut Avenue, that would greatly enhance and protect the residents from any situation that would occur in their neighborhood. We did an economic study. We found out that approximately $90,000 annual in sales tax revenue and property tax revenue would generate to the city of Joliet by this shopping center being constructed, over $1.7 million over 20 years. We contacted Chief Benton with respect to the question of potential increased crime as a result of the shopping center. Chief Benton sent me an email stating that I would not necessarily assume that the new development would equate to an increase in crime. There are numerous strip malls in Joliet that have very few crime concerns. The type of businesses that occupy the new development are more of a concern, such as those engaged in alcohol. We will not have an alcohol business in our shopping center. We have received a report from local realtor Rosalie DeAndrea stating that residential home values would not be impacted by this shopping center going up on Plainfield Road. As everyone knows, Mr. Robles, my client, is an experienced landlord. He has a shopping center for a number of years on Collins Street that's enjoyed very good success, brought a lot of good tax revenue, and no problems to the city of Joliet. Mayor, I think sum and substance, as far as the number of things that we've done with the money that we've spent and tried to answer all the issues and concerns of the neighbors, I think that's a nice sum and summary of that.
Thank you.
Here, I have a question.
Yes.
Mike, you said you did a traffic study,
Yes, ma'am.
and do we have a copy of that
Yeah, I'll get a copy of it, sure.
for tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next item is Council Memo 292-17. There's 4 separate items associated with this. The first is an ordinance approving a reclassification of 107 acres along Brandon Road, south of Millsdale, from intermodal terminal transportation equipment and intermodal terminal industrial park to ITA, which is intermodal terminal zoning. The second item is ordinance approving preliminary plat of Centerpoint Intermodal Center at Joliet Subdivision, Phase 17. Ordinance approving a final plat of Centerpoint Intermodal at Joliet Subdivision, Phase 17. An ordinance approving a recording plat of Centerpoint Intermodal Center at Joliet Subdivision, Phase 17. This is to accommodate a new rail spur at the Centerpoint. Originally, it was thought that the city area would be more with the buildings, but instead they're gonna put a rail spur in this location. So that's the need for the rezoning. Council Memo 29.
Excuse me, Mayor?
Yes.
Yes.
On Council Number 291-17, I'm a little concerned that nobody is coming forth from the neighborhood to say anything, make any new comments, and I was wondering if they might be able to talk.
Well, sure. They haven't. Yes.
If I can, Mayor, Members of Council, Mike Hanson, representing Centerpoint. Councilman McCollum, we've notified all the neighbors. We've had the signs up and notices have come out, so I think we've complied with all the statutory requirements.
No, I'm not talking about Centerpoint. I'm talking about the one before, 291-17.
Plainfield Road.
Plainfield Road.
Oh,
The strip mall.
yeah.
Those folks are here. And I was just concerned if they did not get the chance to speak or
Well,
ask
if
questions.
you recall also on that matter, we had 2 meetings of the neighborhood, as you recall.
Right.
And they were led by your honor there. And as well, we also made mention that we would be having these meetings tonight and tomorrow night, and for any interested resident to show up.
Right.
I don't know exactly how many people are here who are at that meeting. I do know that there are a number of residents here from the area who are in support of the petition. I do know that, who weren't at those neighborhood meetings.
Well, this is what I'd like the council to hear. If there's been some changes and there's some compromise, I want to know how the majority of the neighbors feel before we vote on this tomorrow.
Yep. Well, we have comments at the end. We had public comments tonight. We have them at the end.
Okay.
And then it'll be at the beginning of the meeting tomorrow.
Well, I just didn't want them to feel at this point that they were being left out. I just wanted to
No, I agree.
clarify.
If somebody wants to speak on the issue, speak at the end of the meeting, or tomorrow at the beginning of the meeting, there'll be another open comment section.
Because they don't always know the protocol. Okay.
So there'll be an opportunity once we get through the agenda to speak on it.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, Council Memo 293-17, there are 3 items associated with this. Ordinance approving vacation of various portions of a water main easement located at 3851 Youngs Road. Resolution accepting a dedication of water main easement at 3851 Youngs Road, and an ordinance approving a revised preliminary plat of Claris Park Joliet subdivision. The approval of the revised preliminary plat and water main vacations and subsequent dedication for a water easement will allow for continued development of the industrial park. Council Memo 294-17, there are 2 items. Ordinance approving a vacation of a portion of a water main easement located at 4050 Rock Creek Boulevard, and a resolution accepting dedication of a public utility and drainage easement for a water main at 4050 Rock Creek Boulevard. This is to accommodate a new building, so essentially we're vacating one easement and replacing it with another. Council Memo 295-17, ordinance approving a special use permit to allow a resale store for general household goods located at 360 West Jefferson Street. So this is located immediately south of the Wendy's, basically in the corner of Center and Jefferson. And retail shops are required to have a special use to be in the B3 zoning. And just so you know, there is one stipulation in this proposed special use, which prohibits the buying and selling of cell phones and gold.
Yes.
What's in the building now, Marty? Is it vacant?
Yes, it is mostly vacant. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what's in there exactly now, but I think there's 4 units. This is one of the 4.
If I may,
Yes.
several businesses have been in that area over the years. They don't last very long. Part of the problem is there's not really any parking. There was a barber shop, there was a restaurant, and there was a beauty shop, and there was another restaurant. And it doesn't seem that anything can really make it at that corner because of the parking, limited parking. It's on a busy street, and there's only about 8 spots at the most to park. It used to be where Josie O'Kane was on the corner. It's just to the east of where they used to be at Center and Jefferson. Just some information.
Okay, Council Memo 296-17, an ordinance amending Chapter 19, Articles 2, Division 5, Sections 19-139 and 19-206 through 213, Parking, Code of Ordinances. This is an amendment to bring our codes up to date with state statutes on individuals with disabilities, which is the preferred term. Council Memo 297-17, ordinance amending Chapter 31, Article 4, Division 2, Section 31-137A, water deposits. So what this does is it codifies existing practice requiring a deposit for a water account. Okay, the next one is Council Memo 298-17, and I'm actually going to ask this be removed from the agenda. We originally thought that maybe we table it and continue discussions with the neighborhood organizations, but instead, we're just going to remove it from the agenda, and then we can always readdress it and place it on an upcoming agenda if the need arises. The next,
You need a vote on that, Marty?
I think we'll just,
Tomorrow, we can,
Tomorrow, yeah.
under the agenda, approving the agenda as written, it'll be with the following change.
Okay.
Council Memo 299-17, ordinance amending Ordinance 16569, which established salary ranges and fringe benefits for exempt employees. Recall this was on a previous agenda and it was continued, so that way we can restate the ordinance in its entirety. So what had happened in the past is there have been council memos and other amendments of ordinance 16569. So what we wanted to do is basically restate it in full, so that way if they're, to incorporate all the previous changes into one ordinance. There may be a future amendment with the ongoing compensation study, but what this does is it brings the ordinance up to date and with a current practice as well with the city. Council Memo 300-17, ordinance amending Section 4-15H of the City of Joliet Liquor Code, amending description of a Class G liquor license. This adds a provision so downtown festivals can operate with a liquor license. Council Memo 301-17, ordinance declaring certain properties as public nuisances. Under resolutions, Council Memo 302-17, resolution to approve a memorandum of understanding between the City of Joliet and the Joliet City Partnership to provide marketing and economic development services to the downtown core area. There's been a relatively informal relationship between the city and City Center Partnership, and the resolution basically formalizes an existing relationship relating to financing, transparency, new incentive programs, and membership on the board of directors. The next two items go hand in hand. The first is a requirement of IDOT that the city sign a letter of intent, and that's Council Memo 303-17, resolution approving a letter of intent with IDOT for cost sharing regarding Phase 1 engineering for the I-55/Route 59 interchange and local road network. So in order for IDOT to, say, construct the I-55 and Route 59 interchange, there are additional local or non-state roadway improvements, and this agreement deals with the local share. So just keep in mind that this doesn't approve the project, but addresses cost sharing with the city and IDOT for Phase 1 engineering. So just to give you a quick background on Phase 1 engineering, Phase 1 engineering consists of survey of existing conditions, a purpose and need for the improvement, work with the public and private agencies to create alternatives, conduct engineering studies in conjunction with environmental studies, and prepare traffic control plans, to name a few of things that are going to be covered under a Phase 1 engineering. So the second phase, or the second part of this, is Council Memo 304-17, and this is a memorandum of understanding with Cullinan on the cost sharing of the Phase 1 engineering. So again, 304-17 is a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with Cullinan Properties regarding funding the local share of the Phase 1 engineering expenses related to the I-55, Route 59 interchange and local road network. And I know Mr. Hanson is here, as well as the Executive Vice President, if you have any questions.
Steve Jones, maybe you could clear it up. There are numbers that were reported in the paper yesterday which were very inaccurate. Could you give the council and the public a better idea of what we're looking at?
The way the letter of intent is written from IDOT, it assumes two separate variables. One is the grand total of the Phase 1 engineering, which they state as being $7.5 million. And secondly, there's a cost allocation that they list, 5.4 million city and 2.1 million state. That's sort of a structure of an agreement. What the states agreed to do is, as we get into the Phase 1, there'll be a stopping point whereby some of the data that's been collected will be evaluated to determine whether those percentages of allocation will change. So we do have a commitment from IDOT to do that. We feel that those percentages of what's IDOT and what's local should be much more factored to increase the IDOT share. So that's the allocation. Secondly, there's the total cost. We know that the general methodology whereby IDOT determines what a cost estimate is for an engineering project, it's a certain percentage of the total construction cost. And, they assume a straight line. And clearly, there's a certain size project where there's some economies that don't necessarily mean that a 6% factor is going to result in that total dollar amount for an engineering study. So we think once the actual formal process of negotiation is complete with Knight Engineering and IDOT. And once that final dollar amount is determined, we think that that $7.5 million number will be much lower. So in effect, those two variables still have to play themselves out. But in effect, for IDOT to get to the point of actually finalizing that agreement with Knight and completing the negotiations, they need a letter of intent signed by us. So it's sort of a chicken or egg conundrum, but we feel that those numbers will be adjusted.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is 305-17, a resolution approving execution of a sales tax sharing agreement with SRS for development of property located at 1806 Terry Drive. I know we've heard two speakers already, but with the permission of the chair, I would ask Mr. Osberger to come and just address very briefly the question on how, from Mr. Harvey on how this will further economic development in the adjacent area. If you could just address that, very briefly for council.
Tom Osterberger, 111 North Ottawa, here on behalf of the petitioner. I haven't had the luxury, Marty, to look up the case law on that. When we look at any of our incentive agreements, we always want an improvement in the area. If you want to physically know how this is going to improve, which is what Mr. Jones's original concern was, we're taking a subdivision that was done before the stormwater ordinance, we're adding stormwater, we're getting it approved through geotech and your staff here, getting the stormwater, collecting from certain areas from our property and getting into the storm. We are putting on-site detention and then the paving. So from a standpoint of improvement in the area, we all know that any kind of building improvement is contagious. If you had seen this building prior to its current landlord, it was the home of ceramic powders. Nothing had been done for years. And that's true of many of the buildings out there. So, Marty, I can address this further tomorrow and pull the case law from a legal standpoint, but physically, that's the kind of improvements we're talking about. And if you go through that subdivision or look at it from an aerial, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, yes.
Mr. Osberger?
Yes.
What portion of their sales will result in sales taxes?
So all of the sales, this is the part that originally shocked me, and I immediately came to Steve Jones. The sales tax from all of their materials collected at this level. When I heard that Mr. Harvey was objecting on behalf of his client, I wondered whether they were in a similar situation. Apparently in that industry, they're collected. I can't tell you why, but they collect the sales tax at this level as opposed to from an end user, which is wonderful for this situation. We wouldn't even been here but for that issue, or they wouldn't be here, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Council Memo 306-17, a resolution approving elected officials' participation in IMRF. The IMRF board passed a resolution requiring recertification of IMRF eligibility every 2 years. If a resolution is not passed, effective September 1, elected officials will not be allowed to participate in IMRF. Council Memo 307-17 is a resolution approving the rules and regulations of the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners. This is a probably a multi-year project, which first consolidated all the previous amendments of the rules and regulations. Then the rules and regulations were updated and amended. The Board of Fire and Police Commissioners approved the proposed rules and regulations. But just to give you a heads up real quick, in the council memo under police department entry-level hiring preference points, it has 2 points listed for paramedic license, but it's actually experience. The rules are right, it was just there was a misprint in the council memo itself. So like I said, the rules are correct.
Gunner?
Yes.
Marty, why are we removing the residency preference points at this time?
Because you're now required to be a resident.
Oh, okay,
So that was the thought behind that.
I see, all right.
The Council Memo 308-17 is a resolution authorizing execution of an intergovernmental cooperation agreement between the City of Joliet and the Joliet Park District regarding Taste of Joliet.
But they got
Best
all
practice is to formalize an agreement with the Park District relative to police services, which the city has provided in the past. And the Park District then offered the city, just to give you a quick heads up on the agreement itself, the Park District, through the IGA, offered the city some typical benefits of a sponsor of the taste. So in the IGA, you'll see that some of those items had just been crossed out because they're really unnecessary for the purpose of the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Park District. And I know the Park District, there's at least 2 representatives in the Park District. Mr. Carson's is here. If anybody has any questions?
Comments?
Mr. Staub is here too. The next next item is 309-17, resolution appropriating motor fuel tax funds for 2017 motor fuel tax roadways resurfacing contract, number 17-508. Okay, under bids and contracts, these items were reviewed by a public service committee who will report on any issues during the committee reports tomorrow. Just so you're aware, there are a handful of items that require a 2/3 vote. So, as you know, we vote on these together. So if there's any opposition or you wish to vote on any of these things separate, prior to the approval of the agenda tomorrow, ask to vote on them separately, so that way there's no confusion. And finally, there is a request for a brief executive session.
Next, we have public comments. Robert Webb.
In the name of the Most High, Creator of heaven and earth, Yeshua, and on behalf of reasonable thinking human beings among the people of the state of Illinois, particularly the independent political thinkers among Hebrew Israelites, I extend to this council our greetings of peace and friendship. Early this day, I personally hand-tendered over to one of the customer service attendants stationed on the first floor a notice of tender for set-off in reference to account number 199-741-46570, accompanied by 1, offer request for credit, account number 199-741-46570, IRS Form 1040 ES payment voucher, and number 3, utility company payoff coupon money order to serve as payment for discharge of account number 199-741-46570 pursuant to accepting for value, return for value, returning for settlement of account number 199-741-46570. The aforementioned documents were subsequently tendered over to the legal department to be presented to the corporate counsel with instructions describing the appropriate personnel to seek out immediate explanation of the significance of that presentment and the obligations thereunder in respect to that private public security instrument. The notice of tender for set-off instrument designated 7 days for any corrections of deficiencies, dishonor, etc., to be brought to my notice for any corrections. The notice for tender for set-off instrument equally designated 3 to 7 days, business days, approximately 240 hours after the hand delivery of the notice of tender for set-off of account number 199-741-46570 as a time limit for deeming the notice of tender for set-off as being accepted and or approved. There is no written response opposing the notice of tender for set-off. It will cause me, the creditor, principal, undersigned, to have executed a certificate of non-response, which will serve as evidence of the acceptance of the notice of tender for set-off of account number 99741-46570. For those among us who might not have a clear idea of what speaking about is all about, I suggest that you check out the instructional videos on YouTube as far as acceptance for value exempt from levy, or check out the House Resolution number 92, which was issued in 1933 after Delano Roosevelt issued his speech when he got elected concerning the private debts of the people being incorporated into the public debt to pay off the national debt, which is 14 years past due after the second failure on the part of the government to pay off the national debt. But I'm just wanting to put on notice, and if there's something that the corporate counsel don't understand, I suggest you get in contact with one of the U.S. District Federal Judges in Chicago, either George Marovich or Ronald Guzman or Matthew F. Connelly, in order to get clarity in terms of what this notice of tender for set-off is all about, or get in contact with the U.S. Attorney General's office or the Office of the Attorney General, and they'll fully disclose to you exactly what notice of tender of set-off to discharge the debts happen to actually all be about.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, City Council. I'm here tonight to ask the city to make a concerted effort to enforce the fireworks ordinance that was passed in December of last year. Everybody up there voted for it, except for Councilman Dickinson. You weren't at that seat at that time. Right. And also, because the fine was increased to $500 at that time. And I want to remind you that 89% of the people surveyed said they would like the city see the city enforce the ordinance. I had stated that back then. Also, would it be possible to make a effort to have some patrolmen on duty that would be just dedicated to violators, because it's going to be another long weekend, because I think July 4th on Tuesday. So we're going to see it Memorial Day, so we're going to see it again heavy duty for July 4th. But they would be doing nothing but the enforcement of violators. The fines themselves would pay for the officers the extra patrol, because last year I believe there was 45 violations at $500 a piece. That's $22,000 plus. And also, could we put something in the water bill to remind people or to tell people about the new ordinance and remind them that you're going to enforce it? In addition to press release, I know the police chief always puts out a press release and says, statute says this and the enforcement and so on. But can we make a concerted effort to go after that, a little more roughly there? Basically, that everybody will be informed. Nobody can say they didn't hear about it. It'll be in the press. It'll be on the water bill. Oh, also the newsletter. I don't know when the next newsletter is due. Maybe something can be put in the newsletter. Bless you, whoever that was. But maybe you can put it in the newsletter. Thank you for anything you can do to help enforce that new ordinance. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak under public comments?
This is regarding 291-17, the ordinance approving reclassification of 1226 Plainfield Road. That was quite a few changes that were made. If the attorney could give me a copy of them so that we can go over them. Is he still here? Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. If we could have a copy of those changes, because again, everything seems to be going around the neighborhood and not coming back into it as far as information goes.
Mayor.
Ma'am, could you address the council, please?
Oh,
But the question was, Mr. Hanson, could you provide a list of these changes for the neighbors?
yeah, because it just seems to be going around and around, and the neighborhood is not getting the information. We would like to know what's going on.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
Excuse me. We had another meeting, a second neighborhood meeting.
I was out of town at the
Okay, well, I can't help that you're out of town, but we discussed at length, neighbors that were here, all the changes that were made. It was put up on the video board here, and a lot of the changes that the neighbors had requested at the first meeting were compromised with the owners of the property and the developer. So the neighbors were not ignored. The neighbors first neighborhood and then the second one, so maybe you should have talked to some of your neighbors
Well,
or
I have
called
neighbors
me
here
or
with
your
me now.
councilman so that you would have known the changes that were made, because they have been done. I saw
have
them.
neighbors here with me now who are not aware of these changes.
Well, I don't know why, because everyone was notified. I made sure of that. So if you're
Wasn't
getting
notified.
if you're getting postcards and throwing them out, I can't help that.
I was not notified. Sorry. Okay, that's it for me.
Just so you know, the neighbors were not ignored. I just wanted to clarify that.
If I could make a comment, you know, we did make almost all of those changes prior to the second meeting. We announced it at the second meeting. We did not take pains to, you know, give individual pamphlets, if you will, or information to all the people in the neighborhood. I think we're certainly willing to address any of these changes, any comments here tonight. Mayor, if anybody wants to speak, who wants to ask us questions, has comments that are not in favor of our petition, we're certainly willing to listen to them. And so I know, Councilman, you asked us to have 2 meetings. You ran very nice meetings. Perhaps everyone is not fully aware of everything that we discussed, and we have an open book on anything and everything, so.
Would you be available to speak after the meeting?
Absolutely, speak to anybody, and
Okay.
if somebody gives me an email address, I'll send this. You know, I've got my comments typed up, and I can send them to them tomorrow. And, you know, you did a very nice job trying to get through all this meeting, but perhaps some people may not just be aware of everything, you know, so.
Thank you.
If anybody else wants to speak here tonight, we do have some people even in favor of it, Mayor, who I think would like to speak, and if anybody else would, we're certainly willing to listen to them, and I hope that they'd be entertained the opportunity to address the council.
Sure, absolutely.
Good afternoon. This is Patino. I'm a resident of Joliet. I live in 302 Herkimer Street. I've lived there for 6 years now. It's like right behind the current Plaza Rollers where the owners for the establishment Plainfield Road are trying to build. And I just want to say they're great people. Like they care about the neighborhood. They ask us if there anything's problems, and they always like if there's a problem, like they try and help us out. Currently, for me and my family, we have no issues with them. Like there's no problems with the neighborhood or anything like that. So I just want to say that. And I feel like I approve of the building of a Plainfield Route 30. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Gee, no, it's
Okay.
hard for me to talk
Me. You're okay.
publicly. A little emotional, I'm sorry. The parking situation, I would like to understand more about that. Additional parking that they accommodated, that they said the employees will park separately in a different lot down the street. It sounds good, but when winter hits and the snow hits, that really may not be such a viable option if I was an employee at that strip mall. The second thing that so parking really is kind of a concern for me for that strip mall. The other thing is I worry about the kind of businesses going in. I know he's mentioned a few things that they're trying to prohibit and not. I don't know how that's being enforced. My 2 comments would be retail. As you know, strip malls are kind of declining because everything's going Amazon, you know. The other thing would be service. And again, if you're going to be a service industry, you need to have the parking available for the customers. That's the only thing I have right now. Thank you.
Marty, question?
Yes.
Regarding the types of business, I know Mr. Hanson said about no drive-through and some other things. Is that going to be written into the actual agreement?
You know what, I already addressed that question with staff, and essentially the response, you know, with the rope lights, for example, it's going to have to do with their occupancy permit. So if I could ask Mr. Jackson to kind of give a more detailed response to that.
Kendall?
Mayor and members of the council, I believe the zoning request here is for B1, which is neighborhood business zoning. The types of businesses that would be allowed, of course, are retail businesses, service-type businesses, also offices, professional offices are allowed in the B1 zoning district. Things like gas stations, more intensive commercial uses are not allowed in the B1 district. So beyond the types of businesses that are allowed in B1, I'm not quite sure how we would regulate the specific businesses that would be using this particular commercial strip center. So the zoning ordinance is in place, and we do have restrictions on the types of businesses as per the zoning.
I guess the question is, there's nothing more specific other than what's already in the zoning ordinance? I trip you up there, Mike?
I held my ground there.
And it wasn't a purse, it was a man's briefcase.
Kendall, there's nothing more specific than what's already in the zoning ordinance?
No, we don't have a list of, I guess, specific businesses that we've developed. That's something that we could do. We could take a look at the general uses in a B1 and develop a list.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could offer though, in the staff report, they do say a couple things, that I meant to mention as well. Will not allow LED, rope lighting, so those things those are part of the staff reports. Those can certainly be placed in the ordinance, number one. Generally, those ordinances, as you know, are recorded against the property. They really become, run with the land, if you will. That's certainly fine if you want to put any of those restrictions that we've consented to, in the ordinance in order to protect the residents. I can work with staff and Marty and Chris on that, so.
Thank you.
Mayor, I do have a question.
Yes.
Marty, I asked you about the parking, and we went over this, that there's 41 parking spaces,
Yes.
and we looked at other properties, and the parking spaces are based on the business that's going onto the property. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
So without knowing right now what types of businesses are going in there, how can we say that 41 parking spaces is sufficient?
Under the city's code, section 47-17.17 N8 requires one parking space for every 200 square foot of gross floor area of retail. So 41 spaces are required. So this one actually has a few more than that. So, but in order to, I think something came up with respect to the employee parking in the back and using those spots for something other than parking. That's where the applicant would run into, I guess, an issue if all 5 of those spots in the back were utilized, because then you would fall under the 41 spots.
Right. So,
Well, now they know.
Councilman McCollum, if I could answer your question, I believe, I'm gonna read from our traffic study report that we hired the expert. So here's what he says. 43 parking spaces are proposed, which exceeds the city code requirement of 38 spaces. The parking spaces will be perpendicular and served by a two-way circular aisle. Now, here comes the little complicated part. The parking ratio provided is 5.66 spaces per 1,000 square feet. The ITE publication, quote, Parking Generation 4th edition, okay, the expert, the study in the field, the industry-wide reference, recommends as the typical design 85th percentile demand, 3.16 spaces per 1,000 square foot on weekdays, 3.40 spaces per 1,000 feet on Saturday, and 2.39 spaces on Sunday. The ITE ratio results in a range of 18 to 26 parking spaces being needed to meet the 85th percentile demands. Key finding, based on the parking calculations, there will be ample parking always available at the retail center to accommodate both the patron and employee parking demands on site. Thus, there should be no need for the retail center parking to spill out onto the neighborhood streets such as Connecticut Avenue. So our expert addressed that question specifically with the industry criteria in addition to the City of Joliet criteria.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And first of all, I want to apologize. I'm dressed in professional gear, Chicago Cubs. I know you like that. But I just want to say I hope my good friend, Councilman Quillman, questions non-minority businesses as well. I'm a little upset that anybody would be concerned. I know the businessman who operates this business on Collins Street. He does a good job. And we have other businesses along the Plainfield Road District. I ride my bicycle there all the time. I live on Westminster, and my cousin lives on Williams. And I go back and forth all the time. And no one complained about non-minority businesses that have been in that particular area. I can assure those residents, you're not going to have mariachis and whatever else you may think may be going to your neighborhood. It's going to be professional businesses. The man has done an outstanding job on Collins Street, and I think he'll be a great businessman for the area. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on our public comments this evening?
My name is Ardis Gregorush. I'm not a public speaker, and I was asked to speak. I don't think the people are questioning Mr. Robles and what kind of a businessman he is. They just don't want the business or a strip mall there. I think, and for me, I've been there 44 years, and it's a small neighborhood, and we don't want to lose that. That we don't want to lose. But, I mean, if we were to get a landlord, I think Mr. Robles would be a good one to have. My question is, okay, we're building this strip mall, so that means it's all going to be cement. What happens to the water? Does that mean it's going to go right into my house?
Kendall? Or Mike?
I'm going to call on Tom Carroll from Geotech. He's our engineer. He's looking at this matter. Tom, can you come up and address that matter, please?
Good evening, Tom Carroll, Geotech Consulting Engineers. We've conducted the site survey for the property, and any proposed developments will have to comply with the city's ordinances for stormwater management. We will not be allowed to discharge our water onto adjoining properties or onto the adjacent roadways. We'll connect into the existing storm sewer system that's on Connecticut Avenue. So that stormwater will be handled, conveyed down into storm sewers and carried into the existing storm sewer system on Connecticut Avenue.
Thank you.
Anyone else under public comment?
Good afternoon. I actually live right across the street from the Robles, and I have to say, when you say that when people put, I heard this comment, when they actually put work into their house, it's contagious. The family moved in a couple years ago, and they've been wonderful. I'm familiar with the area also on Collins Street, and that strip mall is fantastic. Quite honestly, when I leave my subdivision to go out on Route 30, I almost feel there's a little section there that it's so ugly. And I think putting a strip mall and having some shops there will do the area wonderful. That's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none? Is there a motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, land acquisition or conveyance, pending or threatened litigation, after which the meeting will be adjourned?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motion and seconded to approve. Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Councilman Girl?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Motion carried.